Okay. So once again, welcome. And we're very, very excited that Melpo is joining us. We will proceed with doing the usual that we do with regard to the reading of the stewardship definition and those types of things. And hopefully I'll be able to share. Okay.
Oh.
All right.
It is hard to imagine that our definition of stewardship, which was developed in early 2020. But we need to go back to it whenever possible to remind ourselves of why we're here. Stewardship is our grateful and loving response to God's love, grace, and gifts to us. It's our personal commitment to God and His church to ensure its vitality and continuous growth by joyfully and sacrificially offering of our talents, time, and treasures that we have received from Him. Stewardship puts our faith in action and demonstrates our trust in God. And one of our suggestions is that when your stewardship committee meets, or there is any discussion at the parish level, parish council, whoever, and stewardship is one of the topics, that it may be helpful to read or hand out this definition, because make sure that everyone is on the same page. And now we'll get right into the heart of the program. As Myra said, we are excited and honored to have Melpo with us. Those of you who have been attending relatively recently, Melpo has been on almost all of our calls, and she has been a tremendous friend to Strengthen Stewardship Now, and is available for help on a variety of topics. She is the director of Parish Planned Giving for the Archdiocese, which is a new position. She is a longtime parishioner and steward at St. Mary's in Minneapolis. And tonight's presentation is especially exciting because this is a preview of the program she's going to be initiating at the clergy laity in San Diego next month. So about a month from tonight. So Melpo, take it away.
Fantastic. First of all, Myra and Owen, thank you so much for your hospitality for all of you. I appreciate your time and attention on a June evening. As Owen said, this is a brand new initiative from the Archdiocese that really was born out of the 2022 Clergy Laity Congress, because we are looking at this as a real opportunity for parishes to provide this, again, extension of stewardship to parishioners and to provide some real long-term security for our parishes. And so this program, its resources, its offerings are all from the Archdiocese, free to parishes to access. And so we are going to be launching everything in full. It'll be up live on the website at the launch of Clergy Laity, but you're getting an unbranded, kind of simplified graphic version of what's happening, so you can get a little bit of context. As Owen said, Chicago's my home metropolis. Having done work with His Eminence over the years, I'm grateful to be able to share this with you and really encourage you, if you are going to be present at Clergy Laity, anyone within your parish, it will be the first full Monday, that July 1st date, that we'll be presenting, and then we'll be available at the exhibition hall for access to materials. And the one other housekeeping I will say, if you'd like to add your name to our constant contact list to get mailings out, get information out as soon as things launch and new initiatives come, why don't you put that in the chat, and then we'll be able to add you to our list. And then if there's anybody else from your parish as well, feel free to do that. So I'm going to share screen a little bit and we'll talk. I want to be mindful of time and then make sure we have time for questions. So we'll play this. Let's see. Okay, everybody can see that all right? Great.
Yes.
So I want to start with a tale of three numbers. One of the biggest questions that we get when we talk about this topic is not only just what is parish planned giving, but why is this one more new initiative? What does it mean for my parish? Why do we need to do this? There are other needs that we have. So I just want to tell you, this is one of the parishes that has had a relatively long-standing endowment program that's not been aggressively marketed, but over the years, $800,000 has been gifted to the endowment of this parish through a number of bequests. Over the years, nothing. Since that, it started to develop and grow. It's produced earnings in excess of $600,000 that have been granted back to the parish for expanded ministries, expanded facilities. It's been doing extended philanthropy within the community, all aligned with the parish vision. So with 800,000 in, 600,000 in earnings out, what do you think still remaining? $3.1 million is the solid foundation there. And this is not an aggressively grown endowment, but it just gives you a little illustration of a few gifts can yield almost their equivalent, and still there's a solid foundation for the parish for emergencies, for long-term security. So this is really what's kind of behind that from a numbers practicality standpoint. But we're also going to talk about what it means as a ministry. We talk about stewardship as answering, kind of that our first fruits offered back to Christ. Well, what does that mean when we talk about our wealth, our lifetime, this kind of life gift that we give? So we'll talk a bit about that as well. First, a couple of misperceptions. A lot of people believe that, our parishioners aren't wealthy. We don't have the financial expertise. This kind of giving is too complicated. Honestly, 85% of gifts are simple bequests through a will. And the majority of planned gifts come from steadfast donors, not your wealthiest donors, not those large givers. Because oftentimes, this is the most substantial gift somebody can make. Their income over the years may not give them the liquidity to give grandly as an annual steward. But when they think about some of the things at the end of their estate, they have the opportunity to maybe tithe in a way or do something that they couldn't before. So it has the opportunity to be one of the most inclusive ministries. So we're going to walk through this. I'm a big fan of the rule of three. So to keep this simple, we're going to have a rule of three takeaways. I want you to walk away with kind of an understanding of the three channels of parish giving, the three ways we're called through our lifetime to support our parish and how they work together. Then there's three phases of our planned giving program. Because, for example, I gave the numbers from one parish. Well, that parish needs to do a little bit more to kind of amp up its invitation to more people. Some are getting started from the very beginning. Others are at different stages. So we're going to plan to meet parishes where they are. And the third is three different ways that you can access all of these resources. So I want you to have some takeaways. So let's start. The piece here I just want to talk about is gift potential. If there's no planned giving program, if a parishioner doesn't know, if there's not an endowment, it's a missed opportunity for that parishioner to remember the parish, to be a part of that parish beyond their life, to model giving for their legacy, for their heirs, to maybe have some tax benefits, and the parish doesn't receive the gift. If it's just randomly given and the parish doesn't know about it, the parish doesn't have an endowment, oftentimes that money might go toward a squeaky wheel issue. So the budget might be tight. There might have been a rainy festival. You might need to do something. So that larger gift might not have the longevity that it has if it's planned. If you've got an endowment that's a place that is separate from your operational income, that really allows that gift to grow and compound to give on a regular basis, but also to be there for long term. So this is why we want to think ahead. Really is a timely opportunity. I'm not going to touch on this too much, but we are looking and we are in the midst of the greatest wealth transfer generationally in our lifetime. Over $84 trillion will be transferred generationally by 2045. And 40% of our population have a will. 15% of those have made a planned gift. That means only 6% of the total population have made a planned gift. So that's 94% that we have the opportunity to invite to consider something. And even the opportunity to talk about planning and preparing a will and planning those life things is a real ministry to our parishioners. So we want to think about this as a true ministry. There we go. So again, the Archdiocesan offering, what we're going to have is a comprehensive guidebook that's going to be digitally downloadable, a quick start guide. So you're going to be able to just walk through what are the things that we need to do, where are we as a parish, resources and templates, and we'll talk about things like investment policy, gift policy, donor commitment forms. We don't want parishes to have to reinvent the wheel. So we've talked to a number of parishes around the country that have had established programs. And we've said, what's worked, what hasn't? Let's learn from those lessons. And they are all eager to share because they want parishes to benefit from their experience. And we want you to be able to come in and click and say, I need a donor commitment form. I need a donor directive. This is what we want to be able to provide. So these will be things accessible. We're going to do webinars like this, small clip videos to highlight certain things that might be of value. And then we're also going to be providing coaching counsel where we can individually come to your parish, sit down with your leadership and really help you walk through how this program might operate in your parish or how to advance a program that's existing. So a little bit of an overview. We're going to talk about the 3 phases: establish, advance, and flourish. So how do we give? What's the context of parish giving? This is the biggest that stewardship is that fundamental base. This is what you are foundationally supporting, and everything that goes toward how we behave as stewards, what really calls us. We know from all of the previous webinars and things, it isn't meeting the budget, it isn't paying the light bill. It's my act of giving back, of offering my first fruits. It's my act of supporting the mission and vision of the church. Sometimes, however, in addition to stewardship, we have capital or special projects. Timely things where there might be a 3 to 5 year campaign where we need to renovate a part of the building, build an expanded facility, any of those initiatives. And we're called to give on top of our stewardship. So where does planned giving fit into this? This is where we make a one-time part of our estate that is bequested to the parish. Lots of different ways, from just simply a percentage of your will or a named gift to, and we'll walk through some of the different vehicles. But this is about stewarding our wealth, our lifetime gifts, what we have at the end of our life, versus stewardship of our income, which is what we do on an annual basis. So all 3 of these really fit together. And we talk, again, the stewardship is our sustaining support and that response. Our capital and special projects are advancing initiatives. What are the things we need extra? And then our planned gift is really endowing a legacy. It is that stewardship of wealth. And it's a chance for me to say, I want to be a part of, and I want St. Mary's to be a part of the next generations. The generations before me helped build the parish. We can help sustain it and ensure that it endures for generations. So I want to make one note about comprehensive campaigns, because sometimes a parish might be in the middle of a capital campaign and go, where does planned giving fit? We can't think of this too. Reality is it can fit in very nicely, because honestly, when we're looking at this, as we said, for many of you that may know, if you're part of a university campaign where you went to school, comprehensive campaigns are very common, where a parish may say, we need to do a 3-year campaign to renovate a building. As part of that campaign, we'd like you to increase your stewardship 10% for those 3 years. And we'd also like you to consider a planned gift or a gift to the endowment. So we can talk about ways that this can be packaged together so that one group's not asking for and inviting people for stewardship annually, another group talking about a campaign, and another group talking about planned giving. There really are strategies for this to work cohesively. And so we want to make sure that parishes are aware of that and that we can help you with that messaging. Again, it can be such a powerful witness. There are so many ways, and I want to hit on one thing here. Planned giving, commitments to planned giving actually result in higher annual stewardship. You've made that commitment, that emotional investment in the future of your parish, and you are far more likely to give more during your lifetime. So the idea that it pulls away or somebody says, well, I've done that, so I don't need to do anything else, it doesn't bear out in the statistics. A note about vision and finance. Oftentimes we see these programs and it starts with, here are all of these technical ways that you can give, and you feel you need to be a financial expert. But as we know, the SCOBA, the Council of Bishops, did a study on giving in the Orthodox Church a few years back. And when giving and requests, when people are called to give based on vision, they give substantially more. And in planned giving, that's even more critical because they want to understand. So my husband and I made our first planned gift in our 40s. And so God willing, that doesn't come to fruition for a few more decades. We needed to trust those organizations, those institutions, what their vision was, because by that time we want to know, how's that going to live out? So it's really not about the financial vehicle, but it's about what's the vision, what's the future of your parish, and how are you calling people to be a part of that? So in the rule of three takeaways, we've got the three channels: stewardship, capital, and planned giving and endowment. And they really do work in concert. So first phase of this is established. Say you don't have a planned giving program, you don't have an endowment. Where do you begin? Three keys here: leadership, creating the actual endowment fund, and doing the administration. So a couple of things we're going to touch on here, and the guidebook walks you through all of these. First is leadership, the people around the table. You think about the people on this Zoom call. You think about the team that Myra and Owen have put together. Having a balance of strengths and skills. It isn't just about legal and financial expertise. You want faithful, trusted, and mature stewards that are leading this, that really have an understanding of what the call is for the vision and the future of the parish. But then you want to look at, yes, financial expertise. Well, what about nonprofit? As you start to think about distributing that $600,000 in earnings, those grants, who understands that dynamic? What about marketing? How do you raise awareness within your parish and encourage people to consider a gift? So think about the composition of who's going to be around your table. So many of our parish ministries struggle with succession planning. We get somebody in a role and they're in it for 30 years and they don't know where to pass it on. We're building into this ways that we put in terms and ways that you invite new people in so that we do make sure that leadership gets transitioned. But that first leadership in your established phase is really going to want to be visionary. You want to make sure that they're going to have the ability to establish it, get the tenure up and running. Then the next group is going to need to really kind of document practices and advocate for the program. And the last ones are really going to be out there extending invitations. So at each phase of this planned giving program, you're going to look for different characteristics in your leadership. And we'll talk about ways that you can invite that. Father Nicholas is on the call. The role of clergy and the role of laity. You know, for clergy in this, it's not often a lead role, but it is very much a pastoral role. Because as we'll talk about later, when we talk about planned giving, we're talking about issues of money and mortality. And those, we're talking about our salvation, we're talking about our stewardship. And so having the support, having the pastoral support of your clergy on this in your leadership team is really important. And laity will accompany them. And they'll work in tandem. So it's just very important to understand what that dynamic is and to make sure that everybody has their chance to support this ministry. You know, we'll be providing opportunities for leadership training, because we don't just want to assume somebody knows what they need to do when they step up onto especially a new ministry like this. They need to understand how to advocate. How do I talk about what this ministry is? How do I share it? What's the message? And then how do I invite people to consider a gift like this? People put asking for money right up there with public speaking, paying taxes, all of those things. But when we really start to think about inviting people to have an opportunity to have a legacy within the parish, becomes a very different conversation. And that's part of the training we can provide. I want to talk just for a minute about the value of endowment. Yes, you don't need to. You can simply ask people to remember the parish in your will, and those gifts will come to the parish. That's not necessary. However, the value of a simple separate endowment fund allows you to secure the principal so it doesn't get used operationally or just at whatever's the highest priority at the moment. You compound those gifts. So those 800 became 3,600,000 given away. You're able to outline the values of the parish. You know, the Metropolis just went through the whole vision process. And I know many parishes are taking that lead and doing that within the parish. So important to really define that. And then you really are able to preserve donor intent. So like I said, when somebody makes a commitment, they're able to understand what's the vision of this fund and how will those funds be used beyond my passing. So again, the dynamic here is just that the principal, the core of those gifts stays, and a percentage of earning goes off to whatever your priority areas are once it earns a certain amount. So things that we want to talk about in terms of, fund essentials, these are all the kinds of things we'll provide. It's a distinct endowment. You've got a brokerage partnership. One of the things that many people may be thinking about giving, especially in this generation, are appreciated stocks and bonds. That's one of the highest growth areas right now. If the parish has a brokerage account to be able to receive those gifts, those can even happen as part of annual stewardship. I'm not sure if your parishes are seeing that or not, but we're seeing a number of donors give at the end of the year appreciated stocks. And so that brokerage account allows you to do that. You want to have clear intention about your governance, things that we talked about with leadership. Consider existing funds. A number of parishes have dedicated funds, memorial funds that might be designated for one thing or another, but maybe haven't raised enough yet. We pulled together, I want to say at St. Mary's, hundreds of funds into now 3 buckets. And it really made those dollars and those gifts kind of come alive again. We'll talk about things like, just gift and investment policies. How's the money going to be managed? What are those priorities? And what are the gift policies? And the piece here is, what are we prepared to receive? A parishioner may say, boy, I've got this property I want to leave the parish. Well, the property may not be able to be developed. The property may have some tax issues with it. The parish, by having a policy, you're able to say, this doesn't fit without offending a parishioner. It's part of your precedent, and you're able to not feel obligated to receive a gift that's going to cost the parish, which is something you don't want to do. The giving directives are, how are you passing that money along? What are the ways that you are giving back from the earnings? And the final little bubble under here is about recognition. Every parish has a different dynamic of culture. St. Mary's, I'll speak of again, we don't do a lot of public recognition. It's just the ethos of our parish. But for others, plaques, celebrations, those are all a part of this. So looking at what your policy, what's going to be reflective of your parish, all a part of that fund. Again, investment policy, you're just going to talk about some key pieces there. One thing I will say is that we really will recommend at some point you start to think about a third-party fiduciary to manage these funds. It really takes risk off of any of your own parishioners, and it's a modest investment. But we'll talk about some of the things to look for with that. Again, when you are looking at how do you go from those $800,000 and when do you start to think about the earnings as the fund reaches 500,000, do you maybe give 0.5% of earnings? As it reaches $1 million, do you give 1%? As it reaches 1.5, do you give 2%? And those are off the earnings, and it can generate quite a substantial sum that becomes just a whole nother revenue stream for the parish to direct toward visionary and extraordinary projects. So again, that principle remains. And what's your extraordinary philanthropy? Or what are those extraordinary ministries or projects that this now becomes a whole extra source of revenue for you? I'll just give one example. So for philanthropy, our Philoptikos supports a number of nonprofits in our community for operating budget on an annual basis. When those ministries are in need of a larger, maybe a capital expense or an emergency need, they come to our endowment. And because we've had the relationship, we're able then to help them in a new way. And it really is, again, the way our ministries all collaborate together and how we serve the community and really reflect our vision. Gift acceptance is, again, what I talked about. What are the policies that sort of surround how you receive particular gifts? And there are going to be different considerations about whether somebody will designate everything unrestricted. Will all of that go into your endowment? If somebody wants to designate for a particular purpose. I talked with a priest earlier this week who is in a small parish in West Virginia, and there was a parishioner, now this was outside of the parish, who endowed a fund that basically supports the priest. So the revenue from that endowment pays for their priest. So that was a donor intent, a very specific designated fund for that kind of purpose. So now the parish operation budget is freed of that expense because an endowment's provided for that. So there are some creative ways that donors may choose to do their gifts. So this is the type that kind of always is our conversation here. What are the ways that people give? Again, bequest, gift of assets through their will, that's the majority of those planned gifts. They're not complicated, but you want to understand who's the executor, what's that designation. Another one that's popular right now is designating a life insurance policy that perhaps the parishioner doesn't need anymore, but they can make the parish the beneficiary, or a tax-deferred retirement asset. Maybe that's not something they need. Some people have multiple accounts. Again, parish can become the beneficiary. Gifts of property, these are ones where we do want to have that policy in place. Gifts of appreciated assets, like the stock that we talked about, those can be very beneficial to the parishioner and equally advantageous to the parish. When somebody's living, there are a number of vehicles that they can set up. Gift annuities and trusts, where the parishioner is receiving, they're gifting something to the parish, but they're receiving an annual income during their life, and the parish remains the beneficiary after that. There are reverse trusts where the parish gets gifts over so many years, and then the remainder goes back to the parish would receive the remainder on a remainder trust. The lead trust, the parish would get the lead gift, and the remainder would go back to another beneficiary. Right now, for many of the baby boomers who are reaching the 70.5 age requirement, there's a requirement minimum distribution from individual retirement accounts. And so those rollover gifts that have to happen annually can go right into an endowment, can go right to a parish. There are different ways of giving that really are advantageous to the parishioner and to the parish and the endowment. So just being able to even share these in a very simple way, it might prompt your parishioner to talk to their advisor. You as a parishioner are not designated as a financial or legal advisor, but it's starting the conversation. It's inviting the prayerful consideration. One more piece here is donor advised funds, a very popular vehicle right now where a family might set up a fund that supports their philanthropy. And so the parish might be one of the philanthropies or organizations it supports. It may also be the beneficiary of that fund upon their passing. So just being aware of some of the things that a financial planner might talk with their clients about helps the parishioner understand this is a consideration for my parish, but they need to be aware of that. Again, we talked a little bit about the tax smart givings now. Recognition, I want to just touch on a few things, a few ways we think about recognition for giving. Theologically, this is Father Jim Corderas has talked about this often, and I think it's such a lovely way to have a memorial for the donors who have passed annually. And it's a way to recognize and honor their contribution, but also raise awareness of the endowment and the opportunity to remember the parish. And for those who are still living but have made a commitment, an artoclasia is a beautiful way to celebrate and honor them. And it also ties this commitment to our call as Christian stewards, that it isn't just a financial plan. It's really about our faith and our walk in faith. Again, public, what's the culture of your parish? How do you choose to do those things? But having a policy in place sets precedent. And so you're going to be consistent with donors over the year. I just want to talk about a rationale. Sometimes a donor will say, I don't want to be recognized. Don't list my name. But just like what I talked about with the memorial or the Archdiocese, oftentimes it's a way to inspire others. It's a way to raise awareness that this is an option that somebody might not have thought of, but their generosity becomes a model. And so that's some of the things we want to think about in terms of recognition. Again, the advantages are awareness and inspiration, clarity, consistent stewardship, just making sure, you are doing things in a way that's reflective of your parish. Putting that in a policy, things that about, will you name? What's the consistency? Will you sunset? After 50 years, are you going to change the plaques? Does something need to go? Who and how are these policies going to be revised? It seems like a lot, but one of the things that we talked about with parishes who are maybe 15, 20, 30 years into this process, they said, we wish we would have thought of all of these things at the beginning. If we would have set the foundation, we kept saying, well, when we get to that, when we have enough money, we'll think about distribution. When somebody wants to be recognized, we'll think about that. But then you're waiting until the opportunity comes and kind of caught off foot. This allows you to not be reactive, but to be responsive and really proactive in thinking about it. So we want to provide you with the templates and kind of the framework to think about it so that when you put this in place, it's really set. And it not only helps your leadership run the program, but it helps your donors know, okay, I know exactly how the money's invested, how it's going to be distributed, how things are going to be recognized. There's a real trust that it builds. And that's so essential for this kind of giving, especially. How do you report? How do you tell what's happening? There's always going to be going to the parish council, because this is, again, a ministry within the parish that'll report to the parish council. Often an annual report is a great way. Owen, you just mentioned the impact report from the Metropolis, a beautiful way to tell the story of all of the good works of the Metropolis. Think of a very simplified way, a threefold brochure that simply talks about, here are the gifts we've received, here are the grants, the ways the fund has grown and what we've been able to give. Here's a reminder of the ways that you can be a part of this ministry. Really very simple, but it tells the story, and it raises awareness and invites people to consider their own gift. So I just talked about some of the things you'd include in that annual report. So what's going to be on the deck here that we'll share is the takeaways from Establish. If you haven't, do you have a clear vision? Does your parish have clear vision and values? If you do, how can they be a part of this program? If not, maybe this is a good time to start. Do you have an endowment? Well, is all your leadership, is everything in place? If not, how are we directing memorials and things? Maybe this is something for us to consider. What about leadership? What about administration? So whether you've started or you're just at the beginning, there are considerations to think about it relative to this establishment phase, the leadership, the endowment fund, and the administration. So quick respite here, a little commercial break in this before we go to advance. The shortest will, all to son. Second shortest, all to wife. The longest will, 1,066 pages. And the largest inheritance by a pet, $80 million. So just a few little tidbits to think about that, this is what we're talking about. So with advance, once the endowment's established, now you've really got to make sure that it's growing, that people are aware of it, and that you're telling the stories about the good works that it's doing. So we want to educate and inform, we want to gather and connect, and we want to share stories and statistics. So again, with raising awareness, it's really understanding the role of the endowment. How does it serve the parish? Why is it distinct from those other kinds of giving? Talking about kind of extraordinary and ordinary. It's also a chance to address potential concerns. Are we storing wealth? And one of the values, will it reduce stewardship? What about scarcity and abundance? When we talk about wealth, one of the values of those giving directives, of the fact that it's not just money that's sitting and earning and growing, it's actually giving back annually. That's a real way to say that not only are we growing and having that long-term security, but those dollars are actually actively invested in our community. And so they're doing good today and tomorrow. From the donor's perspective, what are the things that they're kind of concerned about? It's always important to think about the audience. You know, they've got legal concerns, insurance things to think about, letters and legacy. What's the awareness? This statistic surprised me. Only 46% of people who've been named executors are aware of their role. And 35% of adults have or know somebody who's had familial conflict because of an estate plan or a will. So part of this too is raising the conversation. You know, I remember sitting with my mom after my father died and before my mother did, talking about her plans. And it really helped ease some of that understanding so that my brothers and I all were on the same page. But it can become a difficult conversation to start. And what a safe place the church can be to have those conversations, to begin to prompt those conversations. And thinking about the opportunity that a donor might have with making a planned gift is really modeling their giving, their stewardship, their Christian walk, as well as saving their heirs and saving their estate some tax money. There's some passive publicity. These are some of the things that you can do right away on your stewardship card, in your bulletin, on your website. Remember the parish endowment in your estate. Have you considered a planned gift to the parish on your stewardship card? Are you interested in learning more? These are all part of the conversation. And yes, to be included on stewardship, because it helps us reinforce that sense of our giving is holistic. Gather and connect. There are lots of ways that we want to do some seminars that are going to inform. You might gather a legal and a financial planner from your community to answer some questions, but keep it very simple. And remember, you're not there to provide that advice, but to inform. And then gather and cultivate. Oftentimes, for any of you that have done a campaign, a major campaign, you know, oftentimes you start a quiet phase where leadership gathers with their friends and you invite people to join you. Those are conversations that begin here with your leadership. Talk about why I made the commitment that I did and really invite somebody to consider that. The stories and statistics, you know, these are ways that we tell what's happening. Videos, testimonials, beneficiaries, who are the organizations that maybe got the grant, what a difference that made, what a difference a commitment, you know, that a family knows that their parents being honored for their legacy. What are the compounding? How have those gifts grown? Lots of ways. Again, Owen and Myra, we talked about how the impact reports being shared, bits and pieces through social media. That's telling the stories and statistics of that annual report. These are some of the things you can do for your endowment and planned gift. So likewise, in the advance, and I don't know, Myra, if you want to check, there's a question in the chat. You know, again, if you're at this stage, do we have educational resources? Are they working? Do we need to add? Do we have regular gatherings? Are we tracking stories and statistics? What about participation and engagement? Are we getting the same 5 people that are coming each time, or are we inviting more people? What does that look like? Because when we track, that's what we can improve. So the final phase, and this is just our last few minutes, we'll open to questions, is when we've got it established, people are aware, how do we really go out and make that personal invitation and really sit down with someone one-on-one? We want to identify that opportunity. We want to cultivate relationships, and then we want to extend invitation. Because unlike a campaign, kind of a one and done request, this is a really significant, substantial invitation for someone. And it's not going to happen in one request. It's going to take a cultivation. It's about relationship, not transaction. And as we mentioned, there's a tension to legacy giving. We're talking about mortality and money, and we're also talking about issues of family and finances. For many, those things aren't discussed. They can be really, really tenuous, but oftentimes maybe family members want to. And so again, if we can provide the safe place to just open the conversation, to start to have a place where some of the dialogue can take place, it really gives us an opportunity to serve our parishioners. Sensitivities, things like timing, you know, again, not going to someone when they're in hospice, not going to someone or coming too soon. But these are the things, we want to give someone a chance to really reflect. What are the family dynamics? Is this something where we want to make sure spouses are involved, children are involved? Do they want to bring in a financial, what's the dynamic there, and are we aware of it? And then let's not presume the donor's level of awareness. Do they know what their options are? And how can we not presume that and make somebody may feel a little uneasy asking the questions. So we want to be sensitive to that. This is important. And this is for any kind of giving, stewardship, and beyond. Why people don't give? There's a concern that the gift won't be able to, parish can't handle the gift if they're not comfortable or trusting of the financial management. There's a misperception often of the size of a gift needs to be revealed, that I need to tell you how much that commitment is. That's not the case. And if there's a lack of trust in current leadership. And so these are things that we can think about. They're just important issues of trust within our parishes. Just questions to ask us. Would anybody have a concern? Do we need to make sure that people, we address this misperception? And are there any issues with current trust? And how do we address those? Ways to build it: transparent financial accounting, show your history of managing those gifts, have that clear vision for the future, communicate how the funding is being used, and recognize and acknowledge and thank those donors. Really, and for planned gifts, because somebody may make that commitment and it's going to be many years till that comes to fruition, that becomes an annual conversation. It's a relationship even beyond the time of the commitment. It's recognizing that they've made a real lifelong commitment to your parish. So in flourishing, those takeaways might be, how can we share the practice with more people if we're already doing it? Do we need training? Do we focus on cultivation, or do we just kind of get in, make an ask or a request and step back? Do we know how to cultivate? Do we know how to track engagement? And are we sensitive to our timing? So things that we can think about. And these are all areas that we can provide some training, meet with your team, really do some one-on-one. This is an area where a lot of coaching we've done. We've done some with the Metropolis over the years, just to really help volunteers feel comfortable. They may have done this in another context, but it can be a little daunting. And so it can be really helpful to know how equipped you can be and what resources that you have. So in our rule of three takeaways on the three phases, we've got establish when you're just getting started, but laying that really valuable groundwork. Advance, okay, we've got it, but how do we make people aware of it? How do we grow this fund? And then flourish, how do we really get personal about this and cultivate those relationships? So I've walked through a lot of things here that are a part of what we're going to be offering and kind of a frame for the program. But now I want to just show you how you're going to be able to get access to these materials. We're going to be presenting July 1st, that very first Monday at Clergy Laity. We're going to be handing out cards with QR codes for the guidebooks. So there's a 70+ page full guidebook with resources and a 22-page quick start guide. And those will be downloadable so that you can get access to them. Then on the website, we're going to have those resources plus templates for some of the documents that we talked about. So how you can put together an investment policy, how you can put together a gift acceptance policy, as well as then videos. We'll have some of these webinars. We'll have some short, quick videos that can kind of hit some particular points. And then the constant contact list will be providing updates and educational opportunities so that you can continue to grow. You can share that with people who maybe will be leading this ministry. So your three takeaways here are Clergy Laity Congress. Please share it with your delegates and anybody that will be there. The GOA website and constant contact. That's how you're going to get access to the ways that you can take the guidebook and really put this into practice. And it's not designed to be a big thing on the shelf. It's designed for you to really take it and put it into action. Even 1 or 2 steps at your parish really will make a difference. In closing, I wasn't sure if anybody was going to be on from this parish, but there's a parish in your metropolis that when I did a stewardship workshop with last year was talking about planned giving. And that was one of the important things for them. And they just received a $2 million bequest. And let me tell you, it was from 2 sisters. It was not from anybody of means that they would have identified in advance. But they raised awareness about this. They made it possible. They had the endowment in place. And so it really is simply a way of starting to talk about it so that parishioners are aware that this is another way that they can practice their stewardship. So with that, I offer your thanks for your rapt attention. I know there was a lot of, I went quickly through the materials here, but I wanted to be able to kind of give you a framework. And then I'm glad to answer any questions. Let's see, I don't know if we've got in the, we'll stop share here. And then I don't know, Myra, what we've got in the chat.
We just have one person who has provided her email address, and I've got
Fantastic, fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, any questions?
When would the guidebook be available?
It will be available on that July 1st date. When we launch it, it'll be going live on the website and the download will be available.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Melpo. This is absolutely wonderful. Just very informative, very inspiring. Thank you so very much. And let's open it to questions. There is the symbol down there for raising your hand, so feel free.
Well, thank you again, Myra. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm curious if anybody's parish, anybody that's on, if their parish does have an established program, has started with planned giving or an endowment.
All we have done at St. George in our stewardship brochure, we say planned giving, and if you would like more information, we send a letter, but we haven't done any more than that. And you know, this is quite inspiring to really move on this type of initiative. Absolutely.
Hi, Dean Sarantos here from Assumption in Chicago. We've had an endowment for, I think it's approaching 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had some attempts at starting a planned giving program, you know, the front load that with varying degrees of success. So we currently don't really have anything organized. We've had a couple committees start and such several years ago. But yeah, right now we have an endowment worth about $4.5 million, and you know, funded a number of different things with that. And it's grown quite a bit since we started a long time ago. But yeah, I'd say the planned giving side is probably the biggest opportunity. We have to be more sophisticated on that.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. That's great. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. Oftentimes what happens is when there is an established program, I've talked to a number of parishes like yours with multiple millions in the endowment, and there's just, it's become a little passive. It's growing and it's doing, but that outreach effort. So you're not alone in that sense of needing to maybe take that next step, because one generation may have gotten it started and the next generations are really ready to be invited in. So, you know, welcome the opportunity. I hope you find something in the resources, but if there's a way that we can be of service to you, please feel free to reach out so that we can connect and help you get started.
Thank you very much, and definitely found the presentation very helpful too.
Thank you.
Rula?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment. As Myra and Owen said, we don't have anything except in our brochure, but I love the idea with the Archdiocese and the memorial for the people that have gone and made a donation. I think that starts the awareness, because as you said several times in your presentation, it doesn't have to be big. You just have to do it, and you have to plan for it. And I think that idea, and people hear the Archdiocese, because when that happens in the church, you feel it. And then you understand, oh, they were doing it for the person that has passed already, that has given to the church. And I think that's a great way to bring the theology and the planning together. I mean, you got me, because I never even thought of it. I'm only in my 50s, so you know, now I start thinking. But because of this presentation, I am thinking about it now.
Yeah.
That's great. And the theological piece of it, it's so important. I don't know if any or all are familiar with the book Money and Salvation. It's a great one to really talk about the theology of stewardship and giving in the church, and what it means to sacrificially give. And you're absolutely right, Rula. It isn't about numbers. One of the things that we talk about a little bit is even just thinking about tithing your estate. Just a gift of 10% of your estate off the top, as you would of your earnings.
Yeah.
And for some, maybe they couldn't tithe during their lifetime, but they can tithe as part of their estate. And so it just becomes, again, another way to exercise our faith.
Right.
Owen?
This may be a little bit too deep into the weeds at this level, this stage, but I was thinking about governance and the mechanics of that, establishing a board or some mechanism for overseeing the endowment. And do you need to look outside of the parish or the Orthodox in order to have a truly, or one hopes, objective person or persons on such a board?
So what I would say is what we talk about is an endowment advisory board. So an EAB, and we talk about that governance. And it is a board that oversees the endowment fund, and it reports to the parish council. So it's not a separate entity. It's all under the parish council. And those are parishioners. Where you do want to think about that third party objective person is the fiduciary, who's managing the investments. And this is where I will say some with very long established endowments started out, and they just started out with somebody who was an investment advisor. And so they took care of it, and it maybe passed on to another investment advisor. And as those funds have grown, that's just, there's a great deal of risk and liability. And so that's an example where they would say, if we would have started over from the beginning, we'd do a fiduciary right away. Just have that management of those funds overseen by the advisory board, but the management of the funds by an outside independent fiduciary. That would be where your independence goes, not on the board, not,
Okay.
not for the overall governance of it. The other piece that I will say about governance that's distinct too, so some have had one group that manages the finances and one group that manages anything that gets done, kind of giving away from it. We're really encouraging that to be a blended board, because just like in our parish councils, we don't want one to be dealing with the finances and the budget and one part to be dealing with ministry. It's collaborative, it's unified. And so you may have players that bring different expertise, but the board should operate together.
I was curious in terms of the time frame for the example you gave, the 800,000 giving back 600, and then the growth to 3.1 or whatever that number was. What was that time frame? If you know.
Sure. No, it was, I want to say with that one particularly, it was almost 40 years. And so it's rather conservative. That's where, as much as those numbers are compelling, it's also a story where that's an opportunity, because that parish was very conservative, and that parish, like I was mentioning to Dean, didn't necessarily do a lot of proactive invitation and awareness raising. People knew it existed, but they didn't really think about it as an opportunity for themselves. They thought, oh, well, those generous benefactors left something large, that's not going to be me. The idea of really telling the story and inviting people to consider it at any and all levels is really a game changer for this kind of a ministry. So I think that's part of the story we want to tell, is that it is not just for, the wealthiest donors and the largest gifts. It really is an inclusive part of how we practice our Orthodox Christian stewardship. All of us.
Great. I mean, that certainly makes sense. And it's very similar to stewardship. It's you give what you can,
Mhm.
whether it's a percentage of your income or however you want to define it. It is based on your resources,
Mhm.
and somebody, the widow's mite, going back to that.
That's right.
Every little thing is valuable and given from the heart, and regardless of the amount. And then that's how it is. And that's really a good story.
Well, and it is that for some, this will be the most substantial gift they've ever been able to give the parish. And what an opportunity to be able to do that, and what a legacy to leave. So again, I really encourage those of you who are going to be at Clergy Laity to join us on that Monday. And again, to add your name in if you'd like to be on the constant contact list, or direct anybody our way, but we'll make sure that we're sharing resources so that everybody can have access after the launch. So we're getting all of our materials together, everything getting branded and ready. So that's the countdown. But I thank you all for being such a gracious audience for the sneak peek.
Thank you so very, very much. It's been extremely informative and inspiring, and really, really, really appreciate it. And Owen and I are looking forward to seeing you
Good.
in person, and
Good.
being in those meetings and distributing material, and promoting all of these wonderful ideas.
Thank you
Really,
so
really
much.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? I'm happy to answer anything else if there is. Okay. If not, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Our
you.
next meeting will be September 3rd. We're going to meet in July and August. And also, Father Nicholas, if I can ask you once again, if you could do a closing prayer.
Yes, I'm not in front of a computer though, but
That's okay.
Lord Jesus Christ, our God, you who called us to be stewards of your holy church, help us as we invite and call those who will serve as supporters, apostles, providers, as the myrrh-bearing women were who cared for you during your ministry. May we be the seed that begins that process, not only in our metropolis, but our archdiocese and throughout the Orthodox world, into the lives of all your people. For you are holy always, now and forever, into the ages of ages. Amen.
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 Thank you all so
Thank you,
very
everyone.
much. Have a
Thank-
wonderful summer, and we'll see you in September, unless we see you
Great.
in San Diego.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.